I'm here to tell you that you are wrong about JJK 261. When this chapter came out, the amount of controversial takes that I've seen, outlandish opinions that I've seen, and just outright definitively incorrect analysis that I've seen has just been outrageous, and so much so that I feel like I need to make a video from it. And it's pretty funny because days before this chapter came out, I said that no matter what happens, the fanbase will be in shambles. It will be a generational crash out, and this is what we're witnessing now. And I am here to tell you that this chapter was nothing more than phenomenal and just masterclass writing. I truly do believe that this may be one of the best JJK chapters we have gotten in a very, and I mean very long time. And I know that is a wild statement to make, a very controversial one considering how hated this chapter is, but I would highly recommend watching this whole video, and I guarantee you that I can at least influence your take on this chapter. So believe me, this video is not one you're going to want to skip. So let's just get right into it. Be sure to leave a like, it helps out a ton, thank you. And of course, if you have not already, be sure to subscribe for a ton of consistent and quality JJK content just like this. I love JJK and I make videos on it all the time, so if you like JJK too, I assure you, you won't regret subscribing. And of course, thank you to the special grade members of the channel, it's much appreciated. Let's get right into this. And before I even start, I do need to address, yes, I'm aware the comments are going to be an absolute shit show. There's going to be people who see the title and thumbnail, they don't even watch the video, and they just dislike and leave a comment saying I'm wrong, or this chapter was horrible, and that's okay. Today, I'm not here to talk to those people. The ones that I want to talk to and discuss this chapter with is you, the one who's still watching this video, because your opinions are the one that I actually care about. And the second point is there's going to be a lot to discuss, so I'll be breaking this video down into separate sections discussing each and every very important point that I think must be discussed around this chapter. Now, to begin with, if you're someone who's not actively in the community, let's say you're just a casual viewer or you happen to stumble across this video, don't worry, I'll give you a brief rundown on what's been going on in the community. Pretty much, if you look on any social media, any forum, any website like Twitter or Reddit, what you'll be seeing is a lot of people calling this a horrible chapter. Now, it's not everybody, I will say it is pretty split, but depending on where you're looking, you can even see more people actually hating on this chapter compared to those who actually liked it. I will say though, now they've gotten these scans out and it's been a full day since those have been released, it does seem like a lot of people are starting to switch their opinions, but of course there's still a lot of people who truly hate this chapter and just call it outright bad writing. But why are people calling this chapter bad? Well, of course it's due to the very controversial and I would say incredibly shocking choice to have Yuta be the one to take over Gojo's body. It wasn't a hallucination, it wasn't Gojo actually coming back, it wasn't even Kinjaku even though he's got the stitch marks, it is Yuta in his body. And this is a decision that just doesn't sit well with a lot of people, with, like I just said, a lot of people calling it bad writing, or Gege just fell off and he just is a horrible author. And again, if you doubt me, you don't even have to go to any of these websites, just check the comments on my previous video. You will see hundreds of comments saying this on that one video alone of mine. Now, of course, there's several reasons why people don't like this choice or why they're calling Gege a bad author. The first reason is agendas. And I'll be breaking each of these points down because I think each of them are very important and they all accumulate into one massive point. So the first one is agendas. I am someone who absolutely loves agendas. I think they are very funny, they're hilarious. I love talking about, oh, the Kashimo agenda or the Yuta agenda or the anti-Hakari agenda. I think the jokes that come out of them are hilarious. The memes that are created are even more funny. And I just think overall it's a great time. Of course, as most of you know, to me, agendas aren't serious. I know for some people it's life and death or more important than politics, but with me, these aren't even things I believe. I just think it's very funny to say, oh, Hakari's a fraud, you know, he's being stalled by the maid, or push the Yuta agenda and say, oh, Yuta's the GOAT, he's the greatest of all time, you know? I don't actually think Hakari's a fraud. I even made a video on that recently, but that's just how I view agendas. And I hope that's how many of you view agendas as well, because they're just jokes at the end of the day. I mean, it's just agendas. But of course, as many of you know, there are a lot of people who take them deadly seriously. And I mean, perhaps just a little too seriously, where it comes to the point of them actively hating Gege, or even what we're seeing from this chapter, they're letting it affect their ability to read and comprehend the chapter itself. It's affecting their ability to even enjoy the chapter. And I think this is when agendas become very dangerous. I know a lot of the times the term reading comprehension is used as an insult. I think almost all the time nowadays they use that terminology in an insulting way, but I do want to remind you that when I say it in this video, I do not mean it to demean or belittle others. I truly mean it by its definition, the ability to comprehend what you're reading. What I'm witnessing, and what I think a lot of you are witnessing, is that these agendas and that these wants and desires and predictions and theories that people made is affecting people's ability to comprehend what they're reading in an analytical way properly, and it's also not allowing them to enjoy the series. So let me just give you some examples here. Which fan bases and which people with agendas are upset about this chapter? The answer is everybody. Of course, Gojo fans are very upset about this chapter because their theory that Gojo didn't come back didn't end up being true. So for that reason, they are upset and very angry. And I want to clarify, I can understand why you'd be angry about that. I can understand why you'd be upset about that. Truly, I get it. I really do get it. I just think that when you go to the point of misinterpreting the series and just calling it bad writing, I think that's too far. But of course, if you just are upset that your theory didn't come come true or are disappointed, that in and of itself is okay. You are allowed to feel that way. But to continue, Gojo fans are upset that our glorious king didn't come back, at least in the way that we wanted to. And of course, it doesn't help that they feel like it's disrespectful that Gojo's body is being used as a tool. That also makes them even more upset. And also something that I'm seeing from some Gojo fans and also other fans of other characters is that just because their theories didn't come true, they automatically equate that to I hate this chapter. And I want to remind you, I'm someone who is really hoping that it's Gojo. I still do hope that he comes back, and I had theories on Gojo coming back, as in Gojo really coming back, you know, not just Yuta taking his body. And even though my theories didn't come true, I still love this chapter a lot, as a matter of fact. It's okay to get things wrong, and it's okay if what you predicted didn't come to pass. That doesn't mean what we got is bad though. Just because it wasn't what you wanted doesn't mean that it's suddenly bad writing. And as someone who wanted Gojo back and predicted that he would come back, even though I'm wrong, I still think this chapter was sensational. But it's not just Gojo fans. For some reason, I'm seeing a lot of Sukuna fans be very upset with this as well, which is very odd because this was not something I was expecting. I was expecting if Gojo were to truly come back, they would have been upset, but the fact that Gojo's still dead, I'm a bit surprised why Sukuna fans also don't like this. And again, not every Sukuna fan's like that, not every Gojo fan's like that. When I say this, I'm just referring to a majority. Of course, there's still a chunk of people in these fan bases that don't feel that way. So if you're a Gojo fan, Sukuna fan, or whoever else that I'm going to mention, I'm not necessarily talking about you directly. But with Sukuna fans, they just really hate this chapter. I think the reason is Sukuna fans ended up being very wrong as well. I mean, you've seen it throughout this entire week. They were very adamant that it was all a hallucination. It was all just a ghost or something like that, and there's no chance that it's really Gojo physically there. They called the Gojo fans absolutely insane for thinking that someone could be physically there. They called it copium. They said Gege would never do that. And even though it's not actually Gojo, the fact that their theories that they were so adamant on being right ended up being so wrong and there was a physical body there, I do believe that that's probably a big reason why they're so upset about this choice. This is probably the most odd agenda you're going to hear, but Hakari fans are actually the ones who really, and I mean really hate this chapter. If you saw some of the bigger Hakari fans on Twitter or whatever social media site you're reading, you can see that they actually hate this chapter, I think, more than any other agenda. And it's pretty funny because even with some Hakari fans, when they thought it was Kenjaku, they said this is peak writing, this is peak fiction. But just minutes after it was announced in the leaks that it's actually Yuta, he's the one that's back, they immediately said it's the worst chapter ever, Gege fell off and he's just a horrible author. I mean, some of the stuff that I've seen from Hakari fans outright saying that they're dropping JJK forever, it's the worst chapter ever. I mean, I've seen some utterly wild things from it. And if you haven't realized, the reason that this is the case is because of Yuta. There is that long agenda rivalry between Yuta and Hakari fans. It's been there since Hakari's had his fight with Kashimo, and it's still there now. And this is why they really hate this chapter, because while it's been something like 24 chapters that Hakari is still being stalled by Urume, which again, I'm not even talking shit to Hakari. I made a whole video saying why it makes sense that the fight's taking so long in a recent video where I even praised Hakari, but because Hakari has still not even touched Sukuna, while Yuta is about to have his second fight in the story against him, while Yuta's gotten some insanely phenomenal character development, while Yuta's doing one of the craziest plot twists we've seen in the series that's making him truly look like the MC, when you're seeing that, and you as someone who was talking shit to Yuta for months and years, saying that Yuta doesn't even have a domain, or saying that Yuta died from the world-ending slash, I can understand why those Hakari fans who've been pushing this agenda, I want to remind you that at the end of the day, these agendas shouldn't be that serious when it goes to the point of you saying Gege is a horrible author and JJK fell off and this was the worst writing choice ever just because your favorite character isn't doing good as another character's doing. Do you see how backwards that logic is? Do you see how your analytical thinking is being affected? Your ability to even comprehend all the writing points that have been left in this chapter has been negatively impacted just because a certain character you like isn't having a good performance? And of course, the list goes on. Yuji fans really hate this chapter, and I mean a lot, because Yuji was punched to the side literally as Sukuna was gassing Yuta up in the same moment. While he was punching Yuji away and tossing him to the side like he was irrelevant, he was saying, I owe you an apology, Okotsu Yuta. I wasn't familiar with your game. He was acting like Shaq right there. And you know me, Yuji is one of my favorite characters ever. And even I gotta admit, he was done dirty like that. But I think it's the opposite though. I think this chapter actually elevated Yuji so much, and I will talk about this in the second part of the video, and it really ascends him even beyond Yuta. That sounds crazy, I know, but trust me, it'll make sense later on in the video. So when you get all of these agendas, and mind you, the 4 characters that I just listed have the biggest fan bases in the series, and there's even more people that are upset about this chapter, like Shoko fans are very upset about it, some Yuta fans are upset about it, but I will say, at least for Yuta, I think he's the only agenda where his fan base is actually enjoying this. But of course, there's still a lot of people that don't like it because they did not want Yuta to become strong this way and they don't want him to die. Now that's the agenda part. What's the other reason that people are saying this is a horrible chapter? Well, it's due to a term that I invented invented called the blind love effect. And this blind love effect is something that I've been saying for years, but what is the blind love effect? Well, there's several variations of it. A lot of the times when someone really likes something or even loves a story, even if that story is not great, let's say it's just okay writing or even potentially bad writing, because the person reading it loves it, in their mind they have to say that this is peak fiction, this is some of the best writing ever, even though it might just be mediocre or just okay writing, but because they love it, they can't have it any other way than it being peak fiction. They confuse something being well written and being able to love a story. Even if a story is just okay or it's just a good story, you know, it's well written, it's okay to still love that story and still have it be your favorites. Like for example with me, one of my favorite series of all time is Fairy Tail. I am not gonna sit here and act like Fairy Tail is perfect. It has many, and I truly mean many, writing issues that are really, really bad. Of course, it still has some phenomenal writing aspects such as the world building, the power system, character development, the characters themselves. I think it's all phenomenal, but of course it has so many glaring issues such as fake out deaths, power cliffing, some plot points which are pretty horrendous, but even so, I accept that. Fairy Tail, it's not perfect. It's not even great, but that's okay. I still love it and I still enjoy it. But that's what the blind love effect is. It's when you can't understand or comprehend that it's okay to like and even love something that's just okay or average. And the interesting part about this is the opposite is also true. It's also okay to hate something that's well written. You can look at something and say, objectively, this is just good writing. The author planned this out from the beginning. It was very well executed. It makes sense within the story. All these things check. And of course, writing is both objective and subjective. I feel like it's one of those things that's a mixture of both, but at the very least, there are some aspects of writing that you can claim is objective. But of course, I do realize there's a lot of subjectivity that goes into writing as well, but you get what I mean. You can sit there and say, yeah, this was well written. I can't deny that, but even so, I don't like it. And that's completely okay too. Just because something's well written doesn't mean you have to like it. Now, what's going on with JJK though? It's a case of something being well written, well executed, and makes perfect sense, and I will touch upon this later in the video, so don't worry, but it's a case of something being fantastically written, but people just don't like it, and that's okay. I will explain later on in the video why this is a very just phenomenal writing from Gege, but that doesn't mean you have to like it. That is completely fine. If you just simply don't like the point of Yuta taking over Gojo's body, God bless you and have a nice day. But what I do have an issue with is when people begin to intertwine I don't like something with this is bad writing. Many of you have to realize that just because you don't like something that happened or what you want didn't happen, that does not equal bad writing. And for some reason, this is something that this fan base struggles a lot with. And I've also seen this, funny enough, in the One Piece fan base, so perhaps this is just something that happens when a fan base becomes too big and far too mainstream. We have just too many theories and too many agendas and fans of certain characters, and when those things don't happen or when certain choices are made that they don't like, they just equivalent that to this is badly written. And this is what's going on right now in this JJK chapter. If you don't like this chapter because of your agenda, or if you just don't like this chapter because you just weren't a fan of the choice, not even about agendas, you just didn't like this happening, there's nothing wrong with that. But I just believe it's dangerous when you mix that in with this is poorly written. Now, why do I think this is well written? Why do I think that this is actually some masterclass writing on Gege's part? And I would argue this is probably the most important part of the video that unfortunately a lot of people in the comments probably didn't get this far, but I think this chapter was incredible on every single front, and let me list them off here. The first and most minor point, so I'll just get this out of the way now, is the fact that it was a shocking outcome that virtually nobody predicted. Of course, I did see a couple people like Alonzi predict this, and shout out you guys if you predicted it, but the very fact that we have a fan base this unbelievably massive, and there were people like me who made 11 different predictions on what it could be, and 99.99% of us didn't get this prediction at all, in and of itself is an amazing feat from Gege. I will say this is the weakest point because something can be shocking and subvert expectations and still be bad writing. For example, Black Zetsu stabbing Madara in the back. I was reading that weekly and I had no idea that was even coming, and that was not well written. So not a very strong point, but still a point nonetheless. Now for some much stronger points. I think this just made sense within the story. Yuta has the ability to copy. Yuta defeated Kenjaku, and like it has been explained before in the story, all you need is just either blood or a body part of someone for Rika to eat for Yuta to get copied. Ryu Ishigori explained this outright. This is nothing new at all, and we also saw this recently. So when Yuta defeated Kenjaku, there was just no reason why he didn't copy his curse technique. I mean, a lot of people for years have been theorizing that Yuta had curse spirit manipulation that he got from Geto during JJK 0, but just hasn't used it yet. So at least in the verse, this makes complete sense. I mean, it makes a shocking amount of sense, and just from a tactical point of view, like Yuta was saying in this chapter, and even Panda said, it increased their odds of winning astronomically. I mean, think about it. If Yuta has the body swap curse technique, it makes complete sense how he's got it. As a matter of fact, it would be weird if he didn't get it. I feel like if he never had the body curse technique, that would have been bad writing, and people would have said, oh, this is a plot hole. Ethics and humanity aside, if both Gojo and Yuta lose, then why not body hop into Gojo's body, the strongest sorcerer of the modern day, to increase your chances of being Sukuna? It makes too much sense. Like, there isn't even a small plot hole or something that's even poorly explained. That's the thing about this moment. It, at least within the story, has no plot holes in it and is just not an ass pull in any sort of way at all. And that's the tough part. Whenever you have a moment like this in a story where something unbelievably shocking happens, usually the way these shocking things happen is by a complete ass pull or some massive plot device that just wasn't explained before, was just introduced for the sake of the massive plot twist. Gege did this plot twist with things that have been established even before JJK existed in JJK 0. So from that point of view, I have to applaud Gege for making it make perfect sense within the story and it just being so logical. Another reason why I think this was fantastic writing, and I think this is probably the biggest reason of all, is what this did for Yuta's character, for Yuji's character, and for Gojo's character. This just took all three of them onto a different level entirely. The narrative elements right here, the character development, the insight into Yuta and Gojo, the depth that was given to these guys, and just how much it enriched their characters and allowed us to see sides of them we just haven't seen before, I think was in and of itself fantastic. And let me talk about this. In this chapter, Yuta was the one who cared the most about Gojo. He truly did care about him on a deep level. As we saw, he even erupted into anger. So is it not sad that Yuta, the one who actually cared about Gojo and understood him the most on a deep level, he was the one who ended up using Gojo's body as a tool? He's the last person who would want to do this because he's so empathetic and kind, and I know him seeing Gojo's memories must be killing him right now. That's why I respect this so much. It's not about what he wants. It's not about his morality or his humanity like he was saying. He's discarding all of those to do what must be done and to beat Sukuna to save everybody else. The chances of him losing his life from doing this are astronomically high, and of course he was going to lose his life anyway, but do remember that he already accepted that the odds of him dying would have been high even before he knew he was dying when they were talking about it in the pre-time skip. He had accepted this fate to cast away his humanity. It's so sad to see how he was in JJK 0, to see how he is now. It's just utterly heartbreaking, and because he's the most empathetic of them all and the kindest, he should be the last person that would have to do this, but unfortunately he's the only one who's capable of doing this. So that's why he has to bear this burden and even throw away his own humanity to protect everybody else. I mean, the amount this elevated Yuta's character I think is incredible, and one thing Yuta got a lot is a lot of people calling him a bland and boring character, or that he just wasn't developed after JJK 0. Well, this one chapter alone elevated him on so many levels just with this one chapter alone. It was phenomenal. And seeing how he erupted into anger at everybody, you could slowly see the anger building up. As he was saying, I'm getting pretty ticked off, and as Kusakabe was talking, you can see his mouth, he's getting angrier and angrier. And even as Maki begins to worry for him, you can just see him absolutely erupt into anger, and even still being angry later on when he's talking to Gojo. I mean, it's just a side of Yuta we haven't seen before. It's not just Yuta, but it's also Gojo and Yuji too. I mean, for Gojo, just getting a deeper insight on his character and just seeing him put on a fake front in this chapter was just so heartbreaking, because Yuta says, you don't mind if I take over your body, and Gojo says, I'm not gonna lose, so I don't really care. But if Gojo truly believed that he wasn't gonna lose, he wouldn't have done what he did in this chapter, where he says, even if I lose to Sukuna, as long as everyone in this room is dealt with, Gakuganji will be effectively in charge. He took care of the higher ups so that the students would be safe after he's gone. He truly cares about his students. Even though he's putting on the front that I won't lose and I'll win, he's still thinking that if I really do lose, I need the students to be taken care of afterwards, where he even says, if that happens, we won't have to worry about the chaos like what happened after Shibuya. And it's not just that. When Gojo tells him to leave and not see what he's about to do, these horrific actions, Gojo actually gets upset, and Yuta says, please don't bear the burden of being a monster alone anymore. And Gojo just has this incredibly sad look on his face. I don't even know if sad is the right word to describe it. I think he's just so lost in thought as we see him in the light and walk into a dark room where he's about to commit some very atrocious actions, and he says, there's nothing that can be done about that. Back then I was left in the dust. I have to catch up. I'm seeing a lot of people misinterpret this scene, or just saying that what Gojo meant was that he had to catch up to Geto in the afterlife, but what I think is actually going on is he's talking about his humanity, because since Hidden Inventory and potentially even before that, the one who's always been his moral compass was Geto. Even when he was about to slaughter all of those cult worshippers after Riko had died, and he said that I wouldn't have felt anything about it, the one that he asked if he should even do this was Geto. Geto's always been his moral compass. So when Geto killed all those people in the village, that's why that hurt Gojo so much, and that's why it utterly shocked him and even broke him. And that's what he's doing right now. Just like Geto once did, he's further casting away his humanity to protect those that he loves, to do what he believes is right. Which is funny because this is what Yuta did. And just like Yuta said, everyone views Gojo as that monster that's needed. He will also become that monster that's needed, and also he too will cast his humanity away, just like Gojo and Sukuna have done. That's the way I at least interpret this Gojo scene. If you have another interpretation, please do let me know, or even if you want to expand on what I just said about this Gojo interpretation, where he says, back then I was left in the dust, I have to catch up. And of course, I think this chapter did wonders for Yuji, and I'll keep this shorter, simply for the length of the video, but this chapter was incredible for both Yuta and Yuji, and like I said before, it genuinely shot them up so much in my favorites. As I said, I respect Yuta so much for going against his morals, ideals, and even discarding his humanity to win and protect everybody. It was for this reason that Sukuna respected Yuta so much that he even said Yuta's full name, that he only says for those who he deems worthy and acknowledges, yet the opposite is what makes Yuji fantastic. As Sukuna said, he knows that Yuji's ideal is to be unbreakable, and by extension of this, Yuji's ideals are also unbreakable. Yuji isn't someone who's gonna cast away his humanity. That's what makes Yuji beautiful. Even after he was forced to kill those transfigured humans, even after he was forced to commit inhuman actions, Yuji's humanity is still there, and it will always be there. He will always be a caring person. He will always be a loving and empathetic person to those around him, and mainly to humanity. Yuji isn't someone who can cast away his humanity, even though there may be times when he's forced to do something that he's not, when this is truly pushed to its limit. Just as Sukuna said, his will is unshakable, his ideals are unbreakable, his humanity will always be there. Yuji is the polar opposite of Sukuna. He would never do what Yuta did, and this is why Sukuna hates him so much. Yuji is truly Sukuna's opposite. He is his true opposite, and this is why I believe Yuji will be the one to defeat Sukuna in the end. Because if Sukuna is defeated by an ideology that completely opposes him, it will be so poetic, and that will be a true defeat to Sukuna. I feel like even if Yuta's the one to defeat him by casting away his humanity, even if Sukuna loses in the traditional sense, it will mean that Sukuna is right. What you needed to do was become just like Sukuna, cast away your humanity, and that is how you would win. In that way, even if Sukuna is killed, his ideologies will have won in the end. But if Yuji is the one to defeat Sukuna while keeping and retaining his humanity, then Sukuna will have truly been defeated. Not just physically, but also from his beliefs, his ideologies, his very foundations would have been completely shattered, since he was just proven wrong by Yuji. This chapter for me was such a massive reminder of that, and it actually made me love Yuji's character even more. There's even more that I could talk about in regards to Yuji from this chapter, and of course from other characters such as Maki. I think Maki got some great character moments in this chapter. I think Shoko's was very interesting. I know that's very controversial, and of course there's a lot of developments with Sukuna, but I'm not going to make this video any longer than it already is, and I think I've made my point very clear. All these reasons together are why I think this is a fantastically written chapter. It's why I think this is great writing. Within the story, it all makes sense. These are things that have been established since day one. Some of these things even before JJK itself existed of JJK 0. There were no plot holes, there were no ass pulls. In terms of shock value, it was very shocking. It was a twist nobody could predict. It was very well drawn. The moment was done very well. The chapter was paced beautifully. We got a clean explanation on all of it, and most importantly, it elevated several characters, both narratively for the story and also their own character development, where it truly let us see parts of them we haven't seen before, and it was just such great writing for all of them. In any way that you look at this, this was just good. There is nothing bad about what happened from this chapter. There is no bad writing. But again, I want to remind you, if you just simply don't like the choice, if this was just something you didn't like, that is completely fine. Like I said earlier in the video, just because something's well written or very well done, that doesn't mean you have to like it. You can simply just not like the choice of Yuta taking over Gojo's body, and that's fine. I just don't like it when people say, I don't like what happened, this is bad writing, Gege fell off, and they don't even give a reason for it. They're just saying, oh, it was a horrible choice. This is just like Black Zetsu, when it's not even remotely close. I mean, there is nothing at all similar about this and Black Zetsu from Naruto. It's just one of those things where people don't actually have a way of criticizing the writing, and they're just trying to compare it to something. But please let me know what you think in the comments. If you agree or disagree, just let me know. And again, I do realize these comments are going to be very toxic, and a lot of people are just going to comment and dislike simply from the title and thumbnail alone, but those aren't the people that that I care about. What I care about is you who have watched this video to the end. Do you agree or disagree with the points that I've made in this video? I'm truly open to hearing different interpretations or thoughts on this, but this is how I strongly feel about this chapter, and I hope this video made my thoughts on it very clear, and maybe I even changed your mind. But if you did enjoy the video, be sure to leave a like, it helps out a ton, thank you. And of course, if you haven't already, be sure to subscribe for a ton of consistent and quality JJK content just like this. Less than 10% of people who watch my videos are subscribed, so if you love JJK, I promise you won't regret subscribing. And of course, thank you to all the channel members as well. Thank you guys so much. You guys truly make these videos possible. I really appreciate it. But that's all from me. Have a great day and take care.